Okay, we're going to talk about the Santa Barbara County Courthouse today. Charles Moore, who was a renowned California architect, former dean of the Yale School of Architecture, he calls the Santa Barbara County Courthouse the grandest Spanish colonial revival building anywhere. And so that's where our story begins in 1850, because California becomes the 31st state in the Union. First courthouse, Santa Barbara, is located on East Correa Street. And we know that that's the old Aguirre adobe. But by 1877, though, the city fathers desired something more stately, just a building that would have been reminiscent of their courthouses prevalent in the East. So they built this beautiful Greek Revival courthouse, complete in 1872. This was designed by Peter Barber, same architect as the Arlington Hotel. And you see this Greek cross shape with these large columns and pediment. You could have seen this courthouse anywhere across the country. Later, they had a Queen Anne Victorian style Hall of Records that was added in 1891 when they needed additional space. And but note the cupola on top of the courthouse. Now again, this was laid in the same lot of land as the previous adobe courthouse, the K's adobe was, and it's in the current location bordered by Figueroa, Santa Barbara, Anapamu, and Anacapa Streets. Now, the courthouse buildings remained there until they were replaced by the current courthouse then. So by the turn of the 20th century, though, many in the United States, they were yearning for a new type of architectural style, one that's based on their roots. And we know the roots out west are Spanish-based, not English. So they were looking for something more Spanish in style. So the first major representation for this new type of Spanish colonial architecture was in Balboa Park. 1915 in San Diego at the Panama, California Exposition. You see this brilliant Spanish Baroque and Renaissance style, although that's really not the Santa Barbaran style. So by this time in Santa Barbara, though, there were very few structures that remained from the old Spanish days, the Mission, the Presidio ruins. There were just a few other adobe structures. So most Santa Barbara homes by that time mirrored this Victorian style that was so prevalent in the East. There were many community leaders that were supporting the Spanish colonial architectural style, including Bernhard Hoffman. I love the El Paseo, built in 1923. Its business and retail sections are arranged in just the Spanish Andalusian settings, courtyards and paseos, balconies, and just adorned with the white stucco walls, red roof tiles, and trimmed in black wrought iron. In this Spanish Andalusian style, this was what was to become the standard for Santa Barbara architecture. Oh, sorry. But inspired by this style and with the thought of creating a uniform standard of architecture, there was actually a contest held to create a new design for the county courthouse. And based upon the submitted proposals, 4 finalists were selected. But the submitted proposals, the county didn't have enough money to really fund a new courthouse at this time, so the plans were shelved. But meanwhile, plans moved forward in the 1920s to unify downtown architecture. And actually a city plan was created in 1924 that endorsed Spanish colonial architecture standard. But only one more thing was needed, and that was a catalyst to jumpstart this change. And we all know what that catalyst turned out to be. The earthquake, June 29th of 1925. In addition to killing 13 people, it caused significant damage to downtown buildings, including the courthouse. And the Hall of Records that are shown above. 2 other buildings you're probably familiar with. Cleanup begins immediately, and the Architectural Board of Review was very quick to help businesses begin this rebuilding process, of course, provided they chose a building design with this new Spanish colonial Andalusian style. Over 2,000 building permits were issued really within the first 12 months. But within 4 days of the earthquakes, the county had contracted with William Moser and Company of San Francisco to build the new courthouse. And Moser had been a finalist in the 1919 courthouse architectural contest, which I had mentioned. But after months of community involvement, then the accepted design is what is shown here. It was actually credited to J. Wilmer Hershey. He was a member of the community drafting room, and they were the group of architects who were working to rebuild Santa Barbara. It consisted of 4 buildings and approximately 150,000 square foot design. Construction then begins in October of 1926, completed in spring of 1929 at a cost of about $1.368 million, but that's well over the $900,000 budget they had for the courthouse. But thankfully, oil was discovered just west of Santa Barbara in 1927, and the tax receipts based on the oil deposits, that was used to fund the remainder of the project. Okay, the new courthouse then consists of 2 courtrooms, a county board of supervisors assembly room, a jail, law library, a sheriff's office, hall of records, and many of the other county offices. So this was the county's headquarters right here. The new J-shaped design, as you can see here, this allowed for future growth, which the previous courthouses had not allowed for. This growth could continue down either Santa Barbara Street or down, I can always, Anapamu, that's it, if needed. However, Santa Barbara continued to grow, and instead of utilizing this available space, the county actually built this new building in 1966, and this was to house the County Board of Supervisors and many of the other county offices. In addition, they built across Figueroa Street 6 additional courtrooms, and the jail was moved outside of the courthouse in 1971. Lastly, an additional courtroom and jury room were added across Santa Barbara Street. So the footprint of the 1929 courthouse has really remained the same as it was first built. However, now though, the courthouse houses 6 active courtrooms, plus the law library, sheriff's office, hall of records, but now only just a few of the county offices are located there. In addition then to the mural room, which is the former Board of Supervisors assembly room. So it remains a very active, very vital county courthouse. But it's also achieved its status as a local, state, and national historic landmark. So now we're going to take you on a tour of Santa Barbara County Courthouse. Now, all the tour docents will kind of do it a little bit differently. I like to focus on 2 themes. Number 1 is the courthouse's castle-like features. I mean, seriously, who doesn't like to tour a castle? And the second thing is the symmetry of the courthouse architecture. There is none. This is a very asymmetrical building. Now, why that doesn't sound glamorous at first, it explains how the architect could encompass so many unique architectural styles and niches throughout the building, but all while maintaining this uniform white stucco walls, red tile roof, and black wrought iron details, which are the hallmark of the Santa Barbara style of architecture. So we'll begin our tour in the mural room. Okay, this room, as we talked about, used to house the County Board of Supervisors, and they actually left their furniture when they left. See the semicircular conference room, the main filing area back here. In addition, we'll see on the next slide, we'll see four of these barganios. These were kind of mobile filing cabinets for 4 of the Board of Supervisors. And this chair and there's a similar chair on the other side, these were the chairs of the original judges that they used in their courtrooms back in 1929 when there were only two courtrooms beautifully, beautifully carved wood. Now, using the castle analogy then, this room would have been the throne room. It's one of the largest in size. It's got an elevated floor and very elaborate decorations would have been appropriate for royalty to greet their guests, for example. Then you look up, there's this 30-foot high ceiling, and this appears as if it's a 15th century Spanish castle. It was painted by Giovanni Schmiraldi. He was an Italian artist who had worked on landmark buildings in the United States, including Grand Central Station. And his late medieval design was inspired by a church in his native Palermo, Sicily. And it's still vibrant. Look at the colors in this today. It's as vibrant as when it was created. These large horizontal beams that span the width of the mural room, and they appear to be old wood, but they're in fact metal lath and plaster and paint over top. In fact, all of the structural components of the building are steel and concrete because these were the latest earthquake lessening building materials that were available in the 1920s. So these structural steel beams actually run inside that metal lath covering that you see. The ceiling now is illuminated, which just allows greater visibility to this really brilliant, brilliant artwork. All right, next we look at the iron chandelier. This was designed to appear exactly as if from 15th century Spain, but it was crafted just locally in Southern California. Red tile floors. This is actually in the Cuenca style. That's where the tile design is pressed into the bisque before the tile is fired, and that allows these indentations to hold these vibrant glazes, after firing. Now, just a note to self, you may not want to do this at home because the folks in the courthouse say it's a real difficult to clean inside those indentations. So anyhow, the benches are also original. They're movable as necessary. So you can have multiple different seating arrangements. Now, of course, the original cowhide that used to cover the benches, that's been replaced by a more durable vinyl. Now today, the mural room is used for just all kinds of ceremonial occasions, weddings, judges, induction ceremonies, and of course, tours. But the most spectacular feature of the mural room, of course, are the murals. These were designed and created by Daniel Sayer Grossbeck. He was an adventurous sort, served in several wars as an illustrator. He later moved to join an art colony in Santa Barbara, but he spent much of his time working with famed Hollywood director Cecil B. DeMille. He was a stage and costume designer, just creating these larger than life characters, many of which you can kind of see in the artwork. His painting just outside the mural room, it's called the Landing of Cabrillo in 1924. This was originally commissioned for a local bank, and it now hangs in the second-story lobby. But this is what won Grossbeck the reputation that earned him the commission for doing the murals. This painting was actually on a national magazine. Now, the murals painted by Grossbeck tell the history of Santa Barbara. Well, almost, anyhow. Grossbeck does take broad artistic license in his paintings. They tend to romanticize the history. They do contain several inaccuracies. But as William Moser, the courthouse architect, would be the first to admit, it's sometimes the whimsy and the humor and the romanticism are all part of this castle fairy tale that Santa Barbarans were searching for in this Moorish Andalusian style architecture. Another interesting note is the murals are actually not painted directly onto the walls, but onto muslin, a thin fabric, and that's what is glued to the walls. This allows the paintings to survive just kind of minor earthquake damage. So we're going to begin. I know all of you know the history of Santa Barbara, so we'll kind of take this as quickly as we can, but it's interesting to kind of re-look at these murals. Beginning in the northeast corner, we meet the Canaleños, or the Indians of the Channel, whom we know today, of course, is the Chumash. They moved to this region 13,000 years ago, populating the central coast, including the Channel Islands. Next, we see him meeting Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, the explorer who sailed for Spain in 1542 up the New Spain or the Mexican coast to exploring the California coast. During this journey, he lands in the Channel Islands. He meets the friendly Chumash. But during his return trip, Cabrillo actually died allegedly in the Channel Islands, although no grave has really ever been found. 60 years later, Sebastian Vizcaíno conducts the next Spanish exploration up the coast, in this case as a cartographer mapping the coastline. December the 4th, 1602, he sails into the channel, Santa Barbara Channel, and along with his Franciscan padre, they name this area for the patron saint of the Catholic calendar, December the 4th, of course, Saint Barbara. Now, but like Cabrillo, no settlements are established during this period. That leaves the Spanish-claimed Alta California unsettled and unguarded for over 200 years. It's not until 1769 is there an overland settlement in Alta California with the establishment of presidios or military forts, first in San Diego, then in Monterey, to protect the land from possible interlopers such as Russia or England from attacking the territory. Presidios are then later added in San Francisco and, of course, Santa Barbara in 1782. The Santa Barbara Presidio was unfortunately, it's omitted, not in Groesbeck's mural history. But don't worry, we'll see it later. Instead, Groesbeck captures the early moments of Santa Barbara with the building of the Santa Barbara Mission, pictured on the northernmost wall. Now, here's the mission. The 10th in Alta California, completed in 1786. And you can see it's that adobe building with a thatched roof. Well, maybe it's not. Oh, okay. It's not quite the twin-towered stone and brick Queen of the Mission building that's shown here. Actually, this is the structure that was built after the 1812 earthquake devastated the prior mission building. So once again on this, you can see kind of some of his romantic interpretation of the early mission history with allusions to possible stars here. Doesn't this look like Friar Tuck and Robin Hood, perhaps? Maybe this resembles Edward G. Robinson, perhaps? Could this be Peter Pan? Again, larger than life characters. That's what Groesbeck loved to draw. All right, continuing then. He next captures the Mexican era after Mexico's independence from Spain in 1822. This 24 years, as you know, is quite tumultuous as the Mexican government really attempted to change the traditional-based Spanish rule. It was during this period of time, we know, that mission land was granted in large part not to the Chumash people, to whom it was originally held in trust by the Spanish, but the land was granted to many prominent families in this area, former soldiers and to entrepreneurial ranchers. This began, of course, the decline in the missions. However, the Americans are coming, ever westward moving. They began settling in California in the 1940s with just increasing numbers, declare war on Mexico in 1846. They defeat the Mexican army. And of course, you see John C. Fremont here, crossing over the San Marcos Pass on Christmas Eve of 1946, and he reaffirms the U.S. claim to Santa Barbara, in this case with boots on the ground. The large eagle and sun, oh, that could perhaps suggest victory. The victory is perhaps a new awakening for Santa Barbara. The murals on the west wall, or on the Anacapa side, they represent the economic drivers in Santa Barbara. You see minerals on the first mural. Minerals, we've already talked about. Oil has been an important part of the founding of the courthouse. Sandstone was mined locally in Refugio, and the gold rush, which is actually pictured here, that had an influence in Santa Barbara as masses of Americans have poured into the state. Stock, as in hundreds of thousands of cattle, sheep, pigs, and horses are predominant in Santa Barbara County. And as the price of beef rose fivefold during the gold rush, That's when these rancheros became wealthy. Lastly, agriculture and the third mural is still the most important, and still is the most important industry in Santa Barbara County today, with strawberries, broccoli, and wine grapes, of course, being the most productive crops in the county. As we move out of the mural now, we go through these huge iron double doors. We see another one of the architect's whimsical features here. See this? This is the lock that goes on, the bolt and the lock that goes on the outside of the outer door, as opposed to the inside of the doors that you might expect, particularly if it's the throne room. But perhaps that's whimsically allowing for the public to, quote, lock in the politicians inside the mural room should they sense the Board of Supervisors' inability to come to a decision. Next, we move to the stairwell, another one of the real gems of the courthouse. It's filled with just Moorish features. The ceiling reflects this Bouchard design, also by Schmiraldi. Now, Bouchard is the Moorish craftsman. It's the style created by Moorish craftsmen after the reconquering of Spain by the Christians, meaning after 1492. Now, this Schmiraldi design was inspired by a 15th century synagogue in Toledo, Spain. Also, they're working on illuminating this as well, so it will just be absolutely brilliant when the lights shine on that. Just below the ceiling then are these blind windows, blind meaning you can't see through them. You see a stenciling of affronted birds. Below that's stylized palm trees. And then you see this lancet window over here, which is just another castle feature. Next, we go to this huge iron lantern. This is the largest light fixture in the courthouse. It's a representation of a 15th century Spanish lantern. Now note the crown on top of that. Every lantern in the courthouse will have a crown on it, but just a beautiful iron fixture. But the most spectacular part of the stairwell are the Moorish tiles. Now, they were created in Tunisia, North Africa, and central to the Moorish decorative style is you will see geometry, as in these geometric tiles, as well as floral design. So these handmade, brightly colored tile, they're just a powerful aesthetic and a reminder of the Moorish influence in Andalusian design. Now, just for a second, compare the white stucco walls, the black wrought iron, the colorful tiles of this Andalusian architecture. Compare this to what you might have seen in the East with granite, marble, limestone, and bronze aesthetic. So which do you think was less expensive to the taxpayer? Limestone or stucco? Marble or clay tiles? So you can see, even though this is such a vibrant courthouse, they were considering the taxpayer at that point in time, as these are very favorable cost attributes. Across the hallway from the stairway, you see this large rose window. Now, a rose window is reminiscent of windows in the medieval, the Romanesque style. And you would have seen that in English and French churches. The window, it symbolizes a flower. It's made of clear glass in the shape of petals. And you also then see the cast stone around it is also in the shape of petals. Then near the ceiling, between the rose window and the stairwell, Schmiraldi painted these angels in another different style, the Byzantine style. When you say Byzantine, you think of these golden halos on these angels that you'll see here, and the gold medallion, the gold backgrounds. Now, while these styles that we've talked about are all different, they seem to balance, though, seamlessly within the overarching white stucco walls, red tile roof, and black wrought iron of this Andalusian architecture. Talk about asymmetry. Look how the top of the arch doesn't line up with the opening here, and you have this other architectural feature. Again, nothing is symmetrical in the building, but that's what allows it to be place. Speaking of wrought iron, here's examples of wrought iron. You see the gates inside. This is inside the second floor, and you'll see the other one inside at the stairwell. Then you'll see the balcony, as well as these are window grates, one on the inside of a window in the courtroom and the other on the outside, but just beautifully decorated, both practical as well as aesthetically. Next, as we leave the second floor lobby, we walk down the loggia. I love that word. It's an indoor-outdoor hallway, a very common feature in Mediterranean castles. Now notice these huge, thick castle walls. Well, maybe they're not really that thick. Well, maybe they're actually hollow, as a matter of fact. That same metal lath that we saw in the beams in the mural room are actually creating kind of this wall form that you'll see. From here, we have a great view of the jail. And the county sheriff's department has remained on the first floor since the inception of the courthouse. The second floor was used by the jailer and his family. And the third, fourth, and fifth were all for the inmates here. And as mentioned, the jail closed in 1971. It's mostly used for storage today and an occasional cocktail party. And that's used for restoration fundraising, on an occasional basis here. One of the courthouse architect's challenges of a building this size, though, was to reduce the appearance of the courthouse from simply overwhelming the neighborhood. Now, how did they do that? Well, number one, the building is set back from the street in a very large distance on really all sides, and that has a tendency to remove it from overemphasis. The second thing is the roof line. Notice the roof line. 4 different roof lines kind of break up the monotony of the structure, all asymmetrical. Thirdly is the landscape. The use of these large and diverse trees and plantings, they appear to reduce the building standing, just kind of blending it in with the natural environment. And as for the jail itself, look at all the different window patterns that you'll see here. Very asymmetrical, all different in size and placement. Now, this wasn't by accident. It was designed to break up the monotony of the large structure. At the end of the loggia, we see this large indoor-outdoor spiral stairway and tower. It's got a conical red tiled roof, and they call this area the rotunda. Using the castle reference, this would be the keep. Think of the Red Keep in Game of Thrones. It was the highest and the most defensible part of the castle. Now, this indoor-outdoor spiral staircase is very reminiscent of the stairway towers at Chambord Castle in the Loire region in France. It was designed by Leonardo da Vinci, so it has many of those same features. Inside the stairway, though, you see this beautiful amethyst lighting with the, again, with the crown on top, and you see Smeraldi's paintings of Moorish features. And all of this sits on top of the the emblem and the native sons of the Golden West at the bottom of the flooring. Walking down the second floor corridor, then along Figueroa Street, we passed by courtrooms 1 and 2. These were the original 2 courtrooms. We also passed by 5 paintings by Theodore von Sina, who was a Dutch artist commissioned to paint Santa Barbara history. And these paintings, they weren't originally conceived for the courthouse, but they were placed here for their historical significance. So we start firstly at the burial of Governor Jose Figueroa. Now, he wanted to be buried at the Queen of the Missions, okay, Santa Barbara's mission. But it's an interesting choice because it was Governor Figueroa who secularized the missions, greatly reducing their influence to that of just a parish church. Next, we move to the Landing of Cabrillo. Like the painting of Groesbeck, it depicts the meeting of Cabrillo with the shoemaker. The third one, the planting of the cross of Presidio. This is what Groesbeck omitted, is the founding of Santa Barbara. Here you see the scene of the raising of the cross. You see Spanish governor, and this would be the first Comandante, Jose Ortega. And you see the Chumash on the right, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that did all of the work in Santa Barbara. You see the blessing by Father Sarah. The next mural is the pirate Bouchard pillaging the Rancho Refugio. This is one of Santa Barbara's great historical stories. In 1818, as Argentina was struggling for their independence with Spain, now this was 3 years before Mexico's independence, they hired Hipólito Bouchard, a French mercenary, to raid the Spanish possessions along the Pacific coast, including California. So with 2 ships, 300 men, Bouchard sets sail from Monterey, the capital of Alta California. He sacks it, he burns it, and he kills the livestock. Then they head south to Refugio. Now, a warning had been sent by the Santa Barbara Presidio, warning the Ortega family of an imminent attack at Refugio. So the family did quickly move east into the mountains to avoid harm. Now, that's not quite what's shown in this picture, but nonetheless, the houses and the livestock were destroyed by the pirates. But then they head south to Santa Barbara. Now, if you want to hear the rest of the story, ask me a question in the Q&A period. You can key it in on your screen there, because I simply don't have enough time to continue the story as part of the session. So I'll call this a cliffhanger. Continuing on then, the Fandango, it captures the marriage of Jose de la Guerra's 16-year-old daughter, Anita, to 38-year-old American merchant Alfred Robinson. Now, the setting, of course, is Casa de la Guerra, also known as Casa Grande. This is the largest home in Santa Barbara at the time. And we know this can still be visited today. The de la Guerra family was arguably the most important family in the first half of the 19th century. What I think is this scene represents so much more than just a wedding. It really is representative of the culture and the spirit of the times. All right, next we move to the center of the courthouse on the Figueroa side, and you'll see the grand doorway across from the law library. Now, the grand doors are over 15 feet tall. They open over the balcony overlooking the courtyard. So if you were in the castle, imagine the king standing on the balcony, introducing his new heir to the adoring townsfolk. And then directly across from that, you see the library. I love the entrance to the library. You see the mascaron. They'll kind of get rid of all of the evil spirits. You see the asymmetrical sandstone coins on the wall. You'll see the scimitar. This is a Moorish scimitar replacing a Roman sword above the doorway. So really interesting. But then you walk into the library and totally unexpected. I want to go back. Perhaps due to the American law being based on English law as opposed to Spanish law, all of a sudden you come into the courthouse and you see this English Gothic ribbed double vaulted ceiling. Now, this is what you would have seen in medieval England cathedrals or universities here. Just unbelievable. In addition, you'll see the walls are decorated by Smeraldi's paintings of a 17th century French map on the left, showing California as an island. And also opposite a map of early Santa Barbara County. Just a few other architectural features on the second floor. One of 4 quatrefoils that you would see, just kind of an architectural feature. These were not really Spanish based. You'll see the kind of a cockle shell shape, just kind of representative of Santa Barbara's proximity to sea. And then just another beautiful lantern that they're throughout the courthouse. As you move down to the first floor, they include 4 active courtrooms, many more works of art, and 4 architecturally significant courthouse entrance, which we'll see next. But in addition, then there's an image representing the legend of Santa Barbara's castle. And that's completed in tile work on the first floor. Of course, you know the story. After Barbara's conversion to Christianity and her refusal to renounce her conversion, she was beheaded by her father, who was instantly then struck by a lightning bolt. So here's the lightning bolt striking the castle. Down below, you'll see the water and kind of swimming dolphins representing the sea. All right, continuing on then. Not to be missed on the first floor is the large three-dimensional topographical map of Santa Barbara County. And then there's just another little unique one-off niche within these decorative Moorish tiles nearby. Or now we will look at several of the entrances. Again, all completely unique from each other. The entrance off of Santa Barbara Street below the jail reveals this 20-foot whimsical wooden yet, analogous to the medieval iron yet that when closed would have provided this invincible barrier. Yet our yet in the courthouse, well, it has the lock on the outside. It's made of wood, and the holes in it are probably large enough to almost crawl through. So it's hardly an invincible barrier, but it's fun to look at it. It's just another castle reference and another example of the architect's sense of humor. Now, the Latin phrase at the top of this sandstone translates to learn justice from this warning. It's written in Latin. So it's a constant reminder, a stern reminder, I should say, that unlawful acts have consequences. Now, the exterior wall surrounding this entrance is made from local sandstone right here, and it was actually scored with a tooth chisel. And that's what adds the texture. So when you see it, you'll recognize that. Also note the cast stone turret at the top of the jail with the laughing or the crying gargoyle that's looking down from below. So very, very interesting to see. Another one of my favorite areas is nearby the Santa Barbara entrance. You'll see the Santa Barbara version of the Bridge of Sighs. Interesting. Now that's a name used in Venice, Italy, to describe a very famous similar walkway between a courthouse, okay, this would be like the Doge's palace, and then the jail on the other side. And prisoners would walk through this entryway here, look out the window and just kind of sigh. This is probably their last look on land and sea. Now, presumably in Santa Barbara, this bridge was much more of a two-way street for prisoners. And also there's this unique balcony over here, just another individual attribute of, in this case, just a concrete balcony as opposed to one of the more ornate wrought iron balconies. Another entrance is, of course, off Figueroa. This is called the Lawyer's Entrance, and it was nicknamed due to its proximity to the courtroom scheduling board. And it's just another example of the courthouse's diverse architectural style. The entrance, in this case, it features a medieval Gothic multi-lobed, the multi-leveled or multi-lobed area here. Very asymmetrical entrance. Notice the door is on the far right as opposed to directly under the center of the arch. It's made of sandstone, and it reminds us perhaps of an entrance to an English Gothic church. The wording, reasoning is the life of the law. That's what's inscribed above the entrance up here. Continuing then, the Figueroa Street middle entrance to the courthouse, it provides passage through a Mediterranean style arched and spindled door. Now, ordinarily, this glass between the wooden spindles probably wouldn't be there were it not the need for a secure building. And that would have allowed for just a beautiful sea breeze. The natural light, though, is allowed through there, and that brightens Smeraldi's medieval designs that he'd painted up on the wooden veneer beam that kind of ornaments the ceiling. And in fact, there's actually a twin door on the opposite side, and that leads to the courtyard, to the Sunken Gardens and the outdoor performance platform at the courthouse. Then thirdly, you have the front of the courthouse. And this is the primary entrance. And this is below this enormous triumphal arch. So think of this arch as what you would see in Rome or in the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. This was constructed by Ettore Caterin of Italy. And using sandstone, he crafts these magnificent statues. One represents the goddess of law and justice on the left, and this is the goddess of agriculture on the right. And then across the top, right up here, you'll see the only Spanish wording on the building's exterior. And the English translation reads that God hath given the land, but the skill of man hath built the town. All right, we'll continue. Courthouse visitors then may enter through the building, either through the double doors that were underneath the large arch, or simply through a single doorway right of the arch, which will lead to the information booth here, and that's manned by volunteer docents. So the next slide is the flip side of the arch. On the other side, on the Sunken Garden side, it's also nicknamed the Wedding Arch, is viewed from the Sunken Gardens. This is the most popular of the six, repeat, 6 outdoor wedding venues at the courthouse grounds where they can be, weddings can be reserved for. And sure enough, I drove by the courthouse today, and while the courthouse is closed today, there is a wedding going on, nonetheless, on the grounds. All right, the County Hall of Records has always been considered part of the courthouse complex. But it, as you know, it maintains the birth and death records, real estate filings, issues marriage license, etc. But the building is actually separated from the service building, the building adjacent to the courthouse building, by a small hallway and a moat, albeit it's a dry moat. It's only 10 inches in width, but once again, it's a moat. Castle analogy. Once again, the entrance is unique and very impressive. Now, after visitors pass under one of these 2 low Gothic arches, all of a sudden they're surprised to see these 13-foot double doors covered with copper repoussé panels, which tell the Santa Barbara story. Upon entering then, the ceiling and the roof are under this 45-foot diameter skylight. Below the skylight, you'll see these Moorish-inspired blind windows at the top, and then the horseshoe windows beneath, and then the Greek Doric columns with the painted wood veneer. Not to be underlooked in this really, really fascinating place is, of course, the first technology tools used in the courthouse. See this little metal basket here? Oh yes, this metal basket was used by 2 sisters. I think they're the Covarrubias sisters that used to efficiently move important papers from one floor to another floor via this. So using the pulley system here. All right. Continue on. One of the other interesting features of the Hall of Records is the heating and air conditioning system. There was none when it was created here. But upon demand for adequate heating and ventilation, they built a geothermal system right out here in the kind of the front yard area, several pipes, several hundred feet deep, filled with water. And that water then stays at a steady 70-degree temperature. That is then modestly heated in the basement area and then ventilated up above. And I'm going to show you that picture. Well, that picture is right here. Right below these planters, you'll see the vent. So it actually keeps it at a very, very fine temperature. All right, next, the Courthouse Observation Tower is one of the most popular tourist destinations. It rises to just spectacular views of the ocean, the mountains, the downtown. Interesting, it's a square tower, and that's reminiscent of towers on the Moorish Barbary coast. They feature these arched openings that you'll see, and this, once again, black wrought iron decorative railing we've come to notice. Then while visiting the observation tower, one floor below is the clock room, and that contains the inner workings of the original 1929 Seth Thomas clock, still in operation. Powers the 4 clocks, one on each face of this observation tower. In addition, the clock room has been renovated into a timekeeping museum. It's called the Bisno Shale Clock Room, with painted murals describing the history of timekeeping and other really interesting things. So if you haven't visited the clock gallery, you need to do so once that reopens. Next, we see the Spirit of Ocean statue in front of the building, and it represents Santa Barbara's proximity to the sea. And it's the only water feature in the courthouse, showcasing local models, brother and sister Wolfram and Maya, sex hour. It's Ettore Catarin, once again, who carved the statues. But in this case, he sculpted them with an inferior grade of sandstone. And by 2011, it simply had to be replaced. But they were able to cast a plaster mold of each of the elements before its destruction, and they were able to replace it exactly as you see it here today. One of the other interesting notes is that Maya, according to docent legend, Maya would come out here in her later years in life and just kind of stand around and talk about the time that she modeled for that statue when she was 16. Would love to have been there. Lastly, stones that were used in construction of the sunken gardens that you'll see here. These were actually taken from the 1872 courthouse. That's the one, you know, that was demolished in the earthquake. They were actually able to repurpose those stones for building these walls here. Another 1872 stone was the building's cornerstone. That was actually excavated in 1991 when they were creating the handicapped accessibility near the Santa Barbara Street entrance. And so they have displayed that now also near that entrance. As mentioned previously, landscaping this massive complex was critically important, not only for aesthetics, but also to just break up the scale, the size of the structure. The original landscape architect was Ralph Stevens, and he had created these Mediterranean design using various tropical as well as subtropical plants. In the 1940s, there were about 35 different species of palm trees that had been introduced. And this slide points out not only just the beauty of the landscape, but its ability to reduce. This is the front of the courthouse, the massiveness of the complex. Lastly, just a few other unique architectural elements. One is the exterior loggia that is just, it's almost completely hidden by the landscape. The other is the mission style bell tower. Now, this is the only mission style architecture that exists on the courthouse. And it holds the old fire bell from the late 1800s volunteer fire department. So Santa Barbara County Courthouse is now over 90 years old, and it remains not only a Spanish colonial architectural masterpiece and a living, breathing courthouse, but it's also just a reminder of a period of time when the community came together to execute an aesthetic vision for the future of Santa Barbara, which we are able to still enjoy today. So thank you very much for listening.